Okay, so we covered a lesson yesterday that is going to help us with what we're doing today. Let's recap what we did yesterday. We learned something called combine like terms. This is where I have an expression which looks like it has multi-steps here, but I am combining like terms, which means I'm combining my variables and I'm combining my constants. Remember, the variables are the terms that have a number in front of a letter. So for instance, in this one, I have 3x, positive 9x, and positive 5x. Those are my like terms because they all have one thing in common. They're all x's. Then I just treat it like an addition problem. So this is where you have to keep in mind, if they're the same sign I add, if they're different signs I subtract. So for instance, 3 and 9 are the same sign, so is 5. They're all positive. So that means I'm actually going to add all three together. 9 plus 3 is 12, plus 5 is 15. X goes with it. And then I do the same thing with my constants. My constants are the ones without the variable. So I have -4 and +7. But they are different because one's negative, one's positive, which means I'm actually going to subtract them. And 7 minus 4 is 3. But since 7 is bigger, it's +3. Let's do that again. Number the second one right here. My variables first. So I have +2y and +10y. Since they're both positive, I'm going to add them together. So 12 plus 2 is 12, or 10 plus 2 is 12. So 12y and positive. Then I'm going to do my constants, 17, -9, and -11. Since 17 and -9 are different, we're going to actually subtract them. So 17 minus 9 is 8. And since 17 is larger, it's +8. And then -11, I'm going to add to that. But since it's +8 and -11, they're different, which means I subtract. 11 minus 8 is 3. And since 11's bigger, it's -3. So I just put -3. One more just for refreshing. I have 6n, -4n, and -7. 6 and -4 are different, so I'm actually going to subtract them. 6 minus 4 is 2, and 6 is larger, so it's +2. And then -7n is negative, so they're different, which means I subtract. 7 minus 2 is 5, but since 7 is bigger, it's -5n. Then my constants, +13 and +2. Since they're both positive, I do add. So 13 plus 2 is 15, and that stays positive. So that's going to help us with what we see in 7th grade, and we're going to connect it to what we learned last week. So if I look at number 1, we're still going to draw our line down the equal sign. So you've got to keep your sides separate here. If I look at number 1, what would be my variables? Well, in this case, the only variable is 6x. So I'm going to bring down 6x. I don't need to bring the plus with it because it's in front. Then I do my constants, -1 and +30. Since they're different, I do subtract. So 30 minus 1 is 29. And since 30 is larger, it's +29. And then I bring down the 53. And then it looks like what we literally did last week. So I see multiplication, I see addition, which means in the opposite of addition is subtracting. I'm going to subtract 29. The 29 zero out, and I have 6x. On this side, since they're different, I'm going to subtract. So 53 minus 29, going to borrow a little bit here, is 24. And since 53 was larger, it's positive. Then my next step is to divide. So I'm going to divide by 6. A positive divided by a positive is a positive. 24 divided by 6 is 4. So x equals 4. Same thing on number 2. First, draw a line down the equal sign. I'm going to look on the side where the variable is. So nothing happens to the 28. But over here on the right, okay, I do my variables first. So remember, if there's not a number in front of a variable, it's an invisible 1. So -1 here. So I have -1 and -2. Since they're the same, I add them together. So 2 plus 1 is 3, but it's -3k. Got to keep it the same sign. Then my constants, 16 and -9. Since one's positive, one's negative, I actually subtract. So that's 7. And since 16 is larger, it's +7. And then we're back to where we did last week. I see multiplication, I see addition. So the opposite of addition is subtracting, 7. The 7 zero out, I bring down the -3k. On the left, since they're different, I do subtract. So 28 minus 7 is 21. With 28 being bigger, it's positive. And now I divide by -3. Positive divided by negative is a negative, and 21 divided by 3 is 7, so negative 7. Number 3, draw your line down the equal sign. Look at the side where the variable is. If I do my variables, I have negative 8p and positive 7p. Since one's negative, one's positive, I subtract. 8 minus 7 is 1. And since 8 is bigger, it's negative 1p. The only constant I have is negative 2, so I'm going to bring it down. And then I bring down negative 9 on the right. Now it looks like what we've done last week. So multiplication, subtraction, the opposite of subtracting is to add. The 2's cancel out. Then a negative and a positive means I actually subtract because they're different. 9 minus 2 is 7. And since 9 is bigger, it's negative 7. I'm going to divide by negative 1. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 7 divided by 1 is 7. So positive 7. And then hopefully gets kind of repetitive. If I look at number 4, negative 20, nothing happens there, so I'm going to bring it down. I would put squares around negative 4 and negative 6. Since they're both negative, that actually means I add them together. So 4 plus 6 is 10, and it would be negative. And that's it. That's a weird one because there's no constant. So on this one, I don't add or subtract at all. All I do is skip to that last step, which means divide. I'm going to divide by negative 10 because this was multiplication. A negative divided by negative is a positive. 20 divided by 10 is 2. So x equals 2. But you're really going to see questions like what we've seen so far. So that one's just kind of a strange one. If I look at number 5, notice I have two a's over here, so negative 15a and 7a. Since they're different, I do subtract. 15 minus 7 is 8. Since 15 is bigger, it's negative 8. Since the only constant is negative 110, I'm just going to bring it down, and I'm going to bring down the 90 over here. And now it looks like what we did last week. So since I see subtraction, we're going to add 110 to 90. Notice that they're the same, so I do add. 90 plus 110 is 200. Then I'm going to divide by negative 8. Now, I don't know off the top of my head what 200 divided by 8 is, so I'm going to do ice cream. 8 doesn't go into 2, but it goes into 20 twice, which is 16. And then 8 goes into 45 times, so it's 25. A positive divided by negative is a negative, so it's negative 25. Number 6, draw your line down the equal sign. Look at the side where the variable is. Notice I have two variables, 16y and negative 8y. Since they're different, I subtract them. 16 minus 8 is 8. And since 16 is bigger, it's positive. Since the only constant is positive 18, I bring it down. And then I'm going to bring down the negative 6 over here on the right. Now it looks like what we did last week. Since I see addition, we're going to subtract. The 18 zero out. Since negative 6 and negative 18 are same, we're going to add them together. So 18 plus 6 is 24. And they're going to be negative because they're both negative. Then I'm going to divide by 8. A negative divided by positive is a negative. And 24 divided by 8 is 3. So negative 3. Number 7, draw a line down the equal sign. Look at the side where the variable is. Notice I have two x's, 7x and negative 12x. When I add them together, they're different. One's positive, one's negative, which actually means I subtract. 12 minus 7 is 5, but since 12 is bigger, it's negative 5. I bring down the plus 17 because it's the only constant, and then I do the right side, bring it down. Now I look at the left side. I see addition, so I'm going to subtract. 22 minus 17 is 5. It's positive 5 because 22 is bigger, and I do subtract because they were different. I divide by negative 5. The negative 5's cancel. Positive divided by negative is a negative, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. So x equals negative 1. And then gets kind of repetitive. Draw my line down the equal sign. Anytime you have a variable by itself, remember there's an invisible 1 in front of it. I have two variables over here, negative 1 and positive 7. Since they're different, I subtract. 7 minus 1 is 6. But since 7 is bigger, it's positive 6. And now I have two constants, positive 5 and positive 4. Since they're the same, I add. So 5 plus 4 is 9, and they... Okay, so the typo was the 24 was supposed to be 27. When I bring down the 27, I do subtract 27 minus 9, which would be 18. And so then my next step would be to divide by 6. And so positive divided by positive is a positive. 18 divided by 6 is 3. So it is D equals 3. Number 9, I'm going to draw my line down the equal sign. I have two variables over here. I have negative 3n and negative 12n. Since they're the same, I'm going to add. So 12 plus 3 is 15. Negative, they're both negative, so it's negative. My only constant is positive 15, so I bring it down, and I bring down my negative 45. Now I see addition, so I'm going to subtract. The 15s cancel out. A negative and a negative, they're the same, which means I actually add them together. So 45 plus 15 is 60. They're both negative, so I keep it negative. Then I'm going to divide by negative 15. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. 60 divided by 15, I believe, is 4. Yep, so it'd be positive 4. So the main thing to know is it's no different than what we've been doing. Just know you have to combine your variables and then combine your constants and then solve like we've done the last 2 weeks.